All right, guys, I have an awesome one here today. It's about the Indian caste system and how that came to Canada and is here. And as Canadians, we need to hear what is going on. And some of this stuff is honestly ridiculous. I'm going to start with an interview. So, watch this lady who's from the lowest possible caste and just see how this plays itself out in Canada. This is unbelievable.
Now, you may have heard of something called the caste system in India, but did you know it happens here in Canada as well? It's a lottery by birth. And in some Indian homes, it dictates who you can date, who you can marry, the lowest ranking being a, quote, untouchable, which is a title our next guest was born into and was able to break free from. So please welcome Mira Estrada, who's joining us now. Thank you so much for that. It is so good to have you. Thank you. Could you help us understand the caste system, how it works, what it means, and what are the different sort of class systems that exist within the caste system?
For sure. So it's a 3,000-year-old hierarchical system in India. And if you think about it as a pyramid, so at the top of the pyramid, you have the Brahmins, or who are the teachers, the priests. Then you have the warriors. And then you have the merchants and the business people. And then you have the laborers. And then there is a group that is seen so beneath them that they're outside of that system. They're subcastes. And those are the untouchables, or Dalits, which means the broken ones. And so they do the menial jobs of cleaning sewers, and they're forced into these jobs. And like, it is unescapable. That is who you are by birth, and you cannot escape that.
Okay, so just first of all, just now, you may have known some of this already. Now, she gets into personal details and talking about how it's actually in our country, in Canada, how terrible this is. She was born in the lowest class, if you can believe that, and actually got a lot of hate and pushback. But imagine if you are born into this system where you think, oh, my family's from this class, so I can throw garbage all over the place and one of these lower rungs will clean it up because that is so antithetical. That's basically the opposite, I would say, of being a Westerner or being Canadian. But I think it's important that we understand the mindset that some people must be in. And anybody's welcome to comment, more than welcome, wherever you're from. But this is just her experience. Imagine that, though, like littering, throwing it out all over the street, into the forest, and thinking, someone else will clean it up because, I'm in one of the better castes. But let's just hear more about what she's saying here.
You are a champion of this cause. You have been working tirelessly to try and get rid of this hierarchy or have people look past it. Why is this so important to you, Mira?
Well, first and foremost, it's personal because I am born untouchable. And when I look at my family history, recent history, my grandfather in India, he actually learned to read and write sitting outside of school because he was not allowed in a school building. If an upper caste person walks by, he had to put his head in the dirt because even the shadow is seen as impure. My father's era.
Isn't that disgusting?
Era was the era of segregation. So he could go to school. He sat at the back of the classroom. He was not called by his name. He was called BC, meaning backward class. He couldn't drink from the water pot. Upper caste boys would pour the water into his mouth, everything to demean and dehumanize a person. I've never lived a day in my life in India, and caste has been with me my entire life in terms of people asking what caste I am, especially in my 20s, my feeling of self-worth, self-esteem was so low because I didn't tell anybody. I was just passing, not even.
So she's Canadian. She's never spent a day of her life in India, but some Indian Canadians that we share a passport with have been, to saying, what caste are you? You're garbage, you're low. And we're supposed to say, oh, well, let's not be racist. So let's, pretend it doesn't exist. But I want to expose this stuff because I feel terrible for her. And it just, it makes the country a worse place if we don't call this out. But there's a lot more. And you got to see the next person I talk about later and show what she has to say. But anyway, let's continue.
Closest friends, I did not tell a soul what caste I was born into.
That is a hard way to live. And then to realize that people are asking you about caste here in Canada, that is something I did not know. Mm-hmm. So you didn't speak of your caste to anyone around you. What was the turning point? When did you start talking about this with people who are close to you?
So it was a very difficult turning point. Not until I was 40 years old did I talk about it. And I was at one of my close friends, again, growing up here, 20-year friendship. I had just had my second child, my daughter. We were on a play date. My mom even had come with me. And I was a journalist, and I hadn't told anybody about CASTE, but from a journalistic perspective, I had read that lower caste surrogates are paid less than higher caste surrogates. And my friend had just come from India at one of those fertility clinics. And so I asked her, I said, is that true? And she looked at me so nonchalantly and she said, yeah, of course. I would never get a lower caste surrogate. I wouldn't want my kid to be stupid. And she said it, and my heart stopped. And I looked from the corner of my eye. I could see my daughter, my baby daughter, and her daughter playing together. I saw my mom, and I said, I am not going to have my child go through this. And my
So imagine like the parents are telling the kids, and they're all Canadian kids. They're like, you're from the upper caste. Oh, you're playing with someone from the lower caste. And they're saying that here, and the kids are growing up with that here. And then everybody else is supposed to be mixing in and pretending that we don't know what's going on. It's just revolting.
mom and I, when we got in the car, I burst into tears. I said, Mom, I need to speak up. And it was the first time I said, yes, you need to speak up. Because she came from a place of fear as well, which I understand, but she realized, she said, no, you say whatever, you tell the world. And I did.
And you are, you're doing this while your parents watch you take these really courageous and brave steps.
I'm going to go back to this in a minute, but I wanted to show this next thing that is just unbelievable. This is CBC. Doesn't matter what you think of CBC. I don't always like them, obviously, either. But they did this "What is caste" thing, and they have a couple interesting interviews in here. You have to see the second clip, but watch this a little bit.
Eventually lead to caste being considered a protected category, sort of like gender or race or sexual orientation. There's also a move to incorporate teachings into the curriculum.
And that has passed 16-5.
I think we made history. I'm so honored.
The trustee sponsored a motion to have
And teacher to teacher.
I, who am a Dalit woman, who faced discrimination growing up, who felt like I was very much silenced, who heard the casteist slurs, who saw what my parents went through. I don't want the next generation to go through it. I don't want my children to go through it. I really, and especially in my teen years, I felt shame around. I felt fear. I didn't have the words to express myself, and that's why I think having the TDS be recognizing this, if people are going through discrimination, now they have somewhere to report it. They feel there is a safeness in that, and naming it legitimizes it, because for so often we have been gaslit, and by giving it a name, by giving it a voice, we can now finally address these situations.
But that's not the end of it, because
You got to watch
there are
this.
some in the South Asian community who believe that these motions hurt more than they heal, even calling them Hindu-phobic.
Hello, my name is Ragini Sharma, and I'm the president of COHI, Canadian Organization for Hindu Heritage Education. I want to categorically state first that we are completely against any form of caste oppression. The question for us is not whether caste should be addressed, is but how. So our concern with that is that it singles out the South Asian community and the Caribbean community as particularly of concern, as paints them with a broad brush as being bigoted, especially bigoted that they need to be policing. So here in Canada,
Hang on. So you heard these two young women. The first one, at least, didn't spend a single day in India. She's talking about how terrible her life was with certain Indian people. The whole culture here is, saying you're in this disgusting like toilet cleaner caste, and this lady is saying, "Oh well, we don't want you to be Hindu phobic, so we're going to pretend it doesn't exist, and we're going to pretend it doesn't exist in Canada. We don't want to be centered out." Well, look, you've been centering out everybody else, so what's the big deal if somebody says, "Hey, this is what's going on with your so-called upper class"? Nobody cares about it. Nobody wants this, class crap here. And you might be singled out, but isn't the whole idea that you single out other people based on how they're born in the lowest class, which is terrible, or the lowest caste? But listen to this next thing she says.
there's no evidence that there's caste oppression. And I want to say that if there
It's gonna
is,
go back. Hang on.
I fully support
Listen to this.
of concern as paints them with a broad brush as being bigoted, especially bigoted that they need to be policing. So here in Canada, there's no evidence that there's caste oppression. And I want to say that if
Can you imagine that other, young woman, and she went in the car crying with her mom. She said this whole thing felt absolutely terrible her whole life because people like this, like, let me guess, I don't know this person, but she's probably not in the lowest caste, right? Or else she wouldn't have this attitude. But smugly, she's just there. Oh, well, there's no evidence that it's happening in Canada. Like, there's tons of evidence. People are saying that, and it's bothering the young generation and how they're interacting with everybody else. So to say there's no evidence, there's all kinds of evidence. People say it happens all the time. The other thing is common sense. Is that's what you have in India. So you think the moment they step off the plane, all of a sudden it doesn't exist. You teach people, hey, you have this family name. You're better than them. They're just get to clean the sewage off the streets. You get to throw garbage everywhere and they'll clean it up because you have this name and they have this name. And you think that just goes away the moment they step foot on Canadian soil? And she says there's no evidence that it happens. Now, there's all kinds of video. Like if you go to even just through this, and you look at some of the other ladies, they talk about their stories like this one. Just click to here for a minute. Let's see what she says. You got to see this stuff, guys.
Had a lot of South Asian friends. I still do. My family was very, very much involved in the temple. I would attend Gujarati language classes weekly. So I was surrounded by the Indian community. And I would actually hear, it was very normal to ask, what jat are you, which is in Gujarati, what caste are you? And my parents had always told me when I was younger, we don't believe in that. We're Hindus. We don't believe in this, segregation of caste. We just don't believe in it. I remember when I was 15 years old, my parents were very serious and they said to my brother and I, you need to come downstairs. We need to have a serious conversation with you. And that is the first time that they explained to us the caste system and that we were born into the lowest rung of that. At that time, we always just used the words untouchable. My dad said we are untouchable. No matter what we do, we are going to be seen this way. People would openly talk about it and show very much pride in their caste. And that's when I sort of began to shrink myself because I didn't want to reveal what I knew. I was scared. I didn't know what it meant, what people would think of me. And so really after I knew what it was, I noticed how much it was around me, but I also noticed how much silence there was of people of so-called lower castes. There was no mention of us unless it was something like derogatory jokes, but there was very much a pride in sharing your dominant caste. I have a big group of South Asian friends. People
So not only is it terrible for her, think about how terrible it is for the rest of Canadians to pretend like we don't know this exists, or some like a group here with our passport is cruising around the country thinking, you know, they're hot crap because they're in some upper caste. I mean, oh,
playing matchmaker with each other. There's the aunties at the temple playing matchmaker as well. And people would always just assume, because we were so well educated, my father, my mother, my brother, myself, that we must be from a dominant caste. And they would always say, oh, Mira, we have this boy. He's from such a good family. And a good family meaning a dominant caste family. And I would think to myself, but I'm not a good girl. Um, how will I ever say this to this family that I'm not a good girl? I remember always thinking, I'm not a good girl. I'm not good enough. I ended up actually marrying somebody who's not Indian at all. And it's funny because even in marrying somebody that's not Indian, my parents felt they really needed to share with his family what caste we are. And so when the parents, we had the get together of meeting each other's families, my dad said to my mother-in-law and my uncle, he said, you know what, we are untouchables and we're the lowest caste. And I remember my mother-in-law's face, and she's like, what is that? I don't know what caste is. I don't know what it is. I don't care about it. And I cannot explain to you the way my heart swelled. And I thought, finally, it was just like the biggest.
So I assume she married a white person. It doesn't have to be, but it just probably is. That's my guess. And she's saying somebody who's not Indian, not involved in this, total Canadian. And that's how anyone's mom would react, right? Like someone says, we're in this low caste. You're like, I don't care about any of that. She's so happy about it. And it's kind of a moving story, honestly. It's a nice story to think that she's welcome by people that just aren't believing in this. But like, look at the hurt she's gone through. She's obviously a total Canadian. Um, and then so imagine we're having in, like she's talking about those aunties running around acting like they're big shots. I mean, we just have to pay it. My whole goal with this channel, Reality is Rough, is to deal with reality as it is. People can comment, they can go back and forth. I like to get in the comments, politely. Maybe I've got something wrong here. I don't know. You can tell me and I will read it. I'll respond. But I mean, just think about these different casts, how foreign this is, how, again, antithetical it is to being Canadian. It does not gel here at all. And just like, what else are we missing with different groups? And I don't know. I just think we have to not have our heads in the sand. We have to know what's going on. The more we know, the better. It's not about hating people, but it's about just understanding what is going on. Is this good for our society? Is it not? Let's not pretend it doesn't exist. And just to go back, I'm not going to play it again, but just this person, imagine her thinking, like, oh, I don't want to be judged for anything. Well, too bad, honestly, because we're about to shine a spotlight on just the truth of this caste system and how it does not belong in Canada. Very happy people are speaking out against it. I'm going to do my part. But anyway, love to hear your thoughts, comments, like, share, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.